as member of the board, you need to constantly be able to question the current position of the company, and also to be ready to rethink the next level of the company. Either if it is a geographic expansion, or it is an acquisition within the same territory, or it is a diversification, or it is even getting rid of some parts of the business if that's not fitting the strategic direction. Of course, it's mainly the management task to come with the proposals, but as a board, you need to have such a deep understanding of the business so that you understand what the management is proposing and be able to support the decision or not. I think it all starts with how well the board or members of the board understand the competitive landscape, also the transformations which are happening outside, which we see now that the pace of transformation is increasing, constantly increasing. So all these aspects of the external and internal environment needs to be well understood. Well, in my opinion, the execution part is definitely the management responsible for. But as a board member, you need to supervise that transition, that it goes in the pace you have designed it or you have thought about it, and that it also gives the results which are required. And again, we are coming to that deep understanding of the company, of the culture of the company, of the challenges, and also of the competitive environment to be sure that it goes in the right direction. Well, I think every organization has an inertia, sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller, but every organization, and the bigger the organization, I think the bigger the inertia. So you need to factor in that slowness, which is inbuilt in the company. People cannot change as fast as, we would like to have the change on paper, because designing the change and the purpose, why you are doing it, and also the outcome, and what results you are expecting. I think you need to factor in the fact that the organization cannot move as fast as you wish, and that has to do with the culture and with the people and with the inertia of the organization. And maybe also that's culturally impacted, but also how the social structures are in the region where you have your company, which completely different in Europe versus US or versus Asian companies, how they deal with these social aspects. It's very different. I think it depends on what is triggering the transition, what is triggering the transformation. If that is triggered of external factors, I think it's easier to understand for the people because they all see what's happening around. So the communication, the narrative of the need for change, it might be somehow not easier, but easier to understand because it's also something which you hear every day in the newspapers and around you. If it's triggered because, the board and the management team see early threat, let's say that they sense that because they have a very deep knowledge of the technology, in this case we're talking about technology companies, that you sense that there is a disruption in the technology. That is not seen by everybody. That is really seen by the people working, at the top of the company. And that is at very early stage, and the earlier the stage, the better, because you are an early mover. And that is much more difficult to transport within the company. So the people, the resistance to change will be much bigger than in those cases because people did not have the time to realize and to sense the need of change and the sense of urgency. Well, I mean, we are all in a competitive landscape. So I think the first movers, the people who really sense the need of transformation, have also a competitive advantage, and you will want to capitalize on that competitive advantage. But sometimes it helps also if the whole industry is moving in a certain direction, because that, makes that from the customer point of view, that change, if it is a technological change, is embraced by more. And if it is embraced by more, it brings more business. I'm thinking about, for instance, let's say the transition in Europe from conventional to LED. If you have just one company doing that transition, it's more difficult because per se it's more expensive solution. But if the whole industry is moving in that direction, of course, you have the critical mass earlier to support the investments needed for that transition. So this is where I see, the importance of having also knowing the competitive landscape, and that there is no very big discrepancy between the different companies in the industry. But again, the first movers or the most efficient movers will have a competitive advantage. No, I think I would have a different narrative, of course. So, I mean, you will not disclose your competitive advantage to the outside world unless you want to do it for different reasons. And internally, you have to sell something which you see it's coming in the future and which probably not everybody is seeing at the right moment. So more difficult to buy, which means the communication is much more important, or gets very important, how you communicate that. Oh, yes, that is a very interesting case. I was 4 years the president of Orgalim. Orgalim is the European trade association for the whole manufacturing industry, the technology manufacturing industry. It's actually a very big organization. It's one of the biggest we have in Europe, with over 770,000 companies impacted by the decision and the lobby work which Orgalim is doing. And that industry was very strongly impacted by the corona crisis because it's an industry which has very, very long supply chains. And the supply chain disruption, I think everybody remembers, coming with the corona crisis. So the lobby for that industry in the favor of, moving and changing and taking the right decisions on the supply chain was extremely important. So as a president, I needed to find a way of unifying those very, very, they all belong to the same kind of industries, of the technology manufacturing industry, but with very different sectors and with very, very different sectorial interests, and also with very different industrial policies. So finding there something which is unifying and having a narrative which can bring us forward. And that was, we occupied, let's say, the narrative of the advanced manufacturing, because that's so important for Europe to be at the front of the manufacturing, not to lose the manufacturing in Europe, but we can only be competitive if that manufacturing is at a very high level of robotization, digitization, so the Industry 4.0 notion, which was defined and invented in Germany for over 10 years ago, which is still just a concept for very many. It's not practical. It's not in practice for the majority of the small, mid-sized companies. So that movement in the advanced manufacturing, from the traditional manufacturing to advanced manufacturing, is absolutely crucial for the industry to remain relevant and competitive and to remain and to stay in Europe. So that was what, the whole strategic repositioning of our narrative of what we were fighting for was moved toward that unique discussion on how to remain competitive through advanced manufacturing.